Hi, this is David Sanchez, and welcome to Real Talk with Strike Out Against Drugs.
For some reason, the lifestyle fascinated me, and I guess because I thought it was going to be fun.
You think it might be innocent, or just using it once, or just using it to have fun.
It does look like all fun and party and happy times, but drugs are the 100% complete opposite.
It was literally that quick. I let my guard down, I tried it, and that was it. That was the end of it.
I just happened to do the wrong thing at the wrong time.
Hi, welcome back to Real Talk with Strike Out Against Drugs. Today we're going to talk about a disease called alcoholism. There are hundreds of thousands of people out there that suffer from this disease that are trying to get help, trying to get treatment, but don't really know where to go or how to get it. Alcoholism is the third largest reason that people are dying from drug-related deaths in our community in the United States. Over 88,000 people die each year in the United States from alcohol-related deaths or personal injury and stuff like that. Today we have a special guest. His name is Alejandro. Welcome, Alejandro.
Thank you.
Alejandro has been suffering from alcoholism for a long time and has done some destructive things in his life. I want to start from the beginning on where this all started. Was there anything going on in your childhood when you were growing up that was making you feel uncomfortable and things like that?
Yeah, I didn't realize, but my mom was sleeping in my bed when I was a little boy. And I found out later, I didn't really know it at the time, but my dad was an alcoholic. He was drunk, and he would beat her at night. He'd actually beat her in her sleep, which was really dangerous. And she would sleep in my bed just so that I would protect her in that way. And I didn't realize that this was all going on, but as I got a little bit older, I noticed the tension. There was always fighting, and I found out that it was because of my dad's drinking. So there was alcoholism in my life, even before I ever had my first drink.
Did you ever witness your dad doing this to your mom? Abusing
Yeah.
and stuff like that?
Yeah, when I was a boy, when I was a young boy, I didn't really remember the physical abuse. I know that they fought constantly.
Right.
And I remember as a young boy also, my dad having his own refrigerator, full of beer. And I remember him hiding bottles around the house also. And so I knew that this was a problem.
Right. So how old were you when the alcohol started to enter your life?
I took my first drink from his beer fridge when I was 10 years old.
Okay.
I was only 10 years old, and it was out of pure curiosity, and it didn't stay with me. And when I went into high school is when I really started drinking, and experimenting with high school friends. And the reasons for doing that was, basically to fit in. It was something to do. We were having fun. I was about 13, 14 years old. I was just a freshman. And so the same reasons, that most kids drink, the peer pressure, fitting in, things like that. But, looking back at it now, I realized that I was drinking also to escape, all those emotions, all those problems I was having at home. And alcohol was my friend. I was bullied also as a kid.
In school?
In school. Like my dad wasn't around to teach me how to fight. My dad wasn't around to do any of that. And, I had to learn how to defend myself, and I wasn't always that good at it. So when I went into high school, I identified with that party crowd, and it didn't matter, we kept our grades up, but I had protection, we were together. I had a group of friends now.
Right.
And within that group of friends, nobody was going to bully me. And there was the peer pressure, and on top of that peer pressure, there was always this unspoken competition, to who drinks the most, that type of thing. And I wanted to outdrink everybody and be like the strongest one. So for me, from the start, alcohol was a way to have friends, to fit in, to not be lonely, to be strong, to be protected, and to forget about the violence at home.
Right. And the violence in school.
And mild violence, yeah, getting picked
being
on.
bullied. So, coming out of high school, I understand you had some good jobs, that you were able to, educate yourself well enough to get these good jobs. But how was the alcohol affecting these jobs? Were you able to hold jobs for long periods of time? Was the alcoholic kind of, you'd stay sober for a little while and then you'd get this good job, and then most alcoholics, once they get paid that first check or that second check, they run to the store and buy some alcohol to congratulate themselves.
Right.
Not really knowing that they're putting themselves in danger. Is that kind of how it was working with you?
I really, I didn't feel any of that tension, any kind of alcohol-related worries or any of that. When nobody said anything to me, when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see that I had any problems.
Right.
Or anything like that. And the funny thing is that there's a big gap, in between high school, and during high school, I'm drinking, and this is when I first started getting in between my mom and dad in physical fights. So there was extra tensions. But throughout college, I was already experimenting with like extra drugs, cocaine, LSD, things like that, like extra drugs, when I was in high school. And when I was in college and throughout, before I really got any real professional work, I didn't really drink at all because I was experimenting with other drugs instead. And I actually got deep into crystal meth and heroin before I even went into alcoholism. So I kicked heroin, and it kind of gave me a sense of being invincible. Like, I've got all this covered. Nothing is going to be a problem. But I got into this relationship, and we had opposite schedules, and I felt alone a lot, and we started fighting a lot. There were a lot of problems within my love life, and I turned to alcohol there, and I realized that that's where I really started drinking, because I was already seeing alcohol as my friend. That was keeping me company. It's another reason.
Your friend in a situation where you were having uneasy feelings about other things, alcohol was the fix for, most people that suffer from depression, most people that suffer from, having things that have happened in their life turn to something to make them feel better. That's just the way the brain works. And alcohol seems to have been your, even over heroin and crystal meth and things like that, seems to be what you needed to turn to help you feel better about what was going on in your life, even though that it was destroying your life at the same time. You've been here in this facility for a while, off and on.
2 years.
And I've seen you at your best, and I've seen you at your worst. You're a real one. You're not a weekend drinker like other people are. When you get in this mode of you're doing really well, and then something happens, what happens?
It could be anything at this point, because I've depended on alcohol for so many reasons that at this point it could really, really be anything. It could be loneliness, it could be anxiety, it could be, that reward. It's not always negative. It could be a positive that I'm looking for it. But, mostly, like you said, alcohol is like any other drug. I'm just using it to feel good. And, I had never been homeless. I had never needed to be in a facility or anything like that. I'd never been on the streets. So even just the situation of being in a home, not having a normal life, that kind of shame, I was brought up that, you work and you have a home and, you respect yourself that way. That kind of depression and dealing with all of that guilt, and that kind of a shame, for me, I turned to alcohol. And I still haven't had, You know, many people who I've trusted, you know, many people who I've talked about and opened up about this feeling and saying, hey, you know, I'm feeling down today, you know, I've got the blues, I wish I could get out of here and do this and that and you know, go out there and really shine. Instead, I've kind of bottled everything up and I've learned to withdraw and internalize everything. And I still depend on alcohol, you know, to be that friend.
Right. So let's take a little break.
They said if I got drunk, I'd be one of the guys. They said if I got drunk, I'd be one of the guys. They lied. Find out the truth about drugs. Drugfreeworld.org.
Hi, we're back for Real Talk with Strikeout Against Drugs. We're here with Alejandro, and you know, we're talking about some deep stuff that has happened in his life. And we left off with, you know, how this alcohol is affecting your life and why you're having these triggers to use alcohol and stuff like that. Again, I've seen you at your worst. I've seen you come back from a run where, you know, your face is scarred. You've done some bodily harm to yourself. And, you know, it always boggles my mind because I'm not an alcoholic. And even though I'm a counselor and I work with alcoholics, it's still kind of mind-boggling how somebody can drink to a point to where they're just, you know, falling down and hurting themselves and things like that. How does that? What happens that you feel you have to drink so much that you have to get to this point? Why isn't it just rewarding myself with a couple drinks and I catch a little buzz and go about my day? Why is it that you have to go to such a low point with alcohol?
It doesn't work that way for me, where I could just have a couple of drinks and feel better and say, okay, you know, dust yourself off.
Let me ask you this. In the initial time before you go and get that drink, is your mind thinking, I'm just going to have myself a little drink?
And
then it just turns into...
I've actually thought that I could control it. You know, at this point where I've thought that I have some power over it, that, you know, I have money set aside, you know, I need this money for this and that.
Right.
And, you know, I have plans, and I'm just going to go and have myself a drink, you know, or two at the most, and I'll be okay, and things will be fine. And most of the time it doesn't work that way. It has worked that way, and it's so conniving, but for the most part, even though I've seen my own destruction, even though I've seen actual scars, even though I've come to the point to be in hospitals, even though I've come to the point where I'm shaking from withdrawals, and needing a drink, waiting outside of a liquor store at 6 in the morning, you know, degrading myself to those levels, and then getting out there and becoming this bum. It's a very Jekyll and Hyde thing. You know, becoming this complete different personality. Even though I do that, I'll go out there and think that I have the strength, you know, at that point, when that thought does cross my mind. And it's such a dumb gamble, because I really know that it's not going to happen. I'm going to end up obsessing, you know, like most addicts do. You know, I think, you know, we have this physical demand, and we have this mental obsession, and my mind just really doesn't, it just shuts off. I'm not thinking about anything else but getting that next drink. And even until I run out of money on the card, run any cash, everything that I have, even if I have to beg for it on the streets, which I do, you know, I will continue drinking.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what are you doing today that is going to help you to stay abstinent from? It's like, I know that you've only been back a couple of days. You've had a recent relapse.
Yeah.
And that was actually, you were gone for, what, a week and a half from our facility. We're glad. We thank God that you made it back. You seem to always make it back once your senses come together. What do you think what are you gonna do differently this time to make things different?
That's a good question, and I really wish. I mean, you must be a great counselor, because I've been through AA and I've been through several rehabs, and I've gotten some self-awareness here and there, and I really have battled with a lot of trust issues that I have, with a lot of the experiences that I have within AA, within sponsors, even within rehab, where I really haven't gotten any of this programming, and so what am I doing different? Like, I really see myself as very new to the program. So the most important thing I think for me to do ever is to not judge myself, not get mad at myself. And that's something that I learned to do when I began to relapse. And I began to ask around and say, hey, how come I never hear, any other speakers or any other treatments talk about these relapses? Like, it seems so uncommon. And I started to learn that, actually a lot of people relapse. And you might learn the hard way, but I've learned many things that way, because I've fallen down so hard. I've had my first seizure. I've ended up in hospitals. I've ended up in jails. And I've snapped out of it, and I've said, okay, what did I do? What did I do wrong? And for me, gradually, I've changed different situations in my life. And I said, okay, I'll get a better job. I'll work in a different neighborhood. I'll stay away from those people. Right. I'll do these things that are very exterior. And it wasn't until recently, the main question is, what am I doing today, that I really started trying to change myself, and not just these situations, because it doesn't work that way, I'm sorry, but it doesn't, I have to work on myself. And that's something that I really had to learn the hard way, and it took some guidance, and you helped me out. This last October, after my dad's death, I had a really bad relapse, and I was offered another great job that I was about to take in December, and I remember we had a conversation, and you said, why don't you try not going to work? Why don't you try not doing that? You have to pay attention. I have to pay attention to patterns. We all have to pay attention to patterns of things that hurt us. And my pattern was, getting a job, and the sick thing is that I would end up getting even a better job, but it didn't matter, because I would still get that paycheck and blow it all on booze. Right. And the relapses, the drinking just progressed to the point where it got so bad, the hospitalization just got worse and worse and worse. And finally, I had to stop working, do something different. And that's still out on the outside, but I stopped working, and I took the time to start working on myself and start reading some self-help books, doing some different kind of therapy, and trying to get, to these issues, trying to get it in there, trying to see what's going on. But I think that my way of seeing things, the way that my brain works, is that I was still treating things like as these problems out here. And okay, if I find the solution here, what could I do to change out here? And finally, what I'm doing now these days is really working on myself and saying, hey, I want to change me. I don't want to change the situations anymore. That doesn't work. It's not helping.
Well, learning about yourself, which means digging deep, maybe some places that you've never went to, and educating yourself on your addiction. Because you can't fight something that you don't believe or you don't know is there. Educating yourself on what's going on with you teaches you that it is there, and that it is something that you have to fight for.
Right? I don't care what anybody says, alcohol is a drug to me. And even though, it was hard for me to go there and admit that after having kicked dope and having, done all kinds of other stuff, I had to come to the realization that it doesn't matter, it doesn't make it any weaker or any stronger. I'm addicted to alcohol. My body demands alcohol. My brain wants to go to alcohol. My heart wants to go to alcohol. It
knows that's what's going to help you. Your brain already knows that.
That's what's going to comfort me.
I want to welcome you back,
Thank you.
Alejandro. We wish you all the luck, and
Thanks.
You know, we're going to pray for you and make sure that we're keeping a close eye on you. Thank you for coming on the show. I know you're usually the cameraman of this show. Alejandro does a lot of work with me with Strikeout Against Drugs. And we're working on getting his life better. You know, alcoholism is probably one of the worst kinds of addictions that there is, because it's so readily sold at the stores, and you're seeing the commercials on TV, and everybody's looking at a cold beer on a hot day. People don't really understand that it can easily turn into a way of life that just spirals out of control and damages not only your physical body, but your life around you. A lot of people go to treatment for alcoholism, but never really get that right treatment because of the time frame or whatever the situation is, and they get a little abstinence from the alcohol, and then as soon as they leave, their foundation is gone. It's right back into the thing. And you know, 88,000 people a year in the United States die from alcohol-related deaths or alcohol-related accidents, and that's a high number. Again, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Those of you that are viewing, if something you heard from this show strikes a chord with you, and you're looking for some type of help, make sure that you reach out. You can call, you can get my number off of the Strikeout Against Drugs website. There's lots of treatment centers that you can go to, a lot of counselors that want to help you. Just reach out, get the help that you need before you end up, you know, hurting yourself or hurting some people that you love. Thanks again for tuning in. This is David with Real Talk with Strikeout Against Drugs. We'll see you next time.